In the dusty town of Red Valley, Arizona, in 1885, lived a young woman named Emma. She was 20 years old, with gentle brown eyes and a kind heart that seemed to shine even in the hardest times. Emma lived with her father, Thomas, on a small ranch outside town where the desert wind carried dust through every crack in their wooden home. Thomas had been a good man once. The kind of father who would lift Emma high on his shoulders when she was small and tell her stories under the starry sky. But after Emma's mother died from a sudden illness 3 years ago, something inside Thomas broke. He began drinking heavily, spending what little money they had on bottles of whiskey that promised to take away his pain, but only made everything worse. The ranch was failing badly. The few cattle they owned grew thin and weak. Bills kept piling up on the kitchen table like autumn leaves, and Emma tried her best to help. She mended fences with her small hands, cooked simple meals from whatever they could afford, and watched her father slowly disappear into his grief and alcohol. Every morning, she hoped he would wake up and be the father she remembered, but every evening brought more disappointment. Emma spent her days working hard around the ranch, feeding the chickens, tending to their small vegetable garden, and trying to keep their home clean. She often stood on their porch at sunset, looking toward town and wondering if things would ever get better. The other young women her age were getting married and starting families. But Emma felt trapped in a sad life with no way out. One terrible spring day, a traveling doctor came through Red Valley. He was a thin man with gray hair who had been treating people across the territory. Thomas, desperate and drunk, told the doctor about Emma's childhood fever when she was just 12 years old. The fever had nearly killed her, leaving her weak. For months, the doctor examined Emma and spoke quietly with Thomas outside their home. Emma watched through the window as the two men talked, her heart beating fast with worry. When they came back inside, the doctor's face was serious. "I'm sorry to tell you this," the doctor said gently to Emma, "but the fever you had as a child may have damaged your body. You might never be able to have children of your own." Emma felt like the world had stopped spinning. In those days, people believed a woman's most important role was to be a mother. She sat down heavily in her chair, tears filling her eyes. She thought about the future she had always imagined for herself. Thomas became even more desperate after hearing this news. He drank more and worried constantly about money. 1 week later, when their last cow died and they had no food left, Thomas made a decision that would change everything. Mary was a respected Apache healer who sometimes came to Red Valley to trade herbs and medicine for supplies. She was a woman of about 40 with wise dark eyes and hands that seemed to heal everything they touched. The white settlers usually avoided the Apache people, but they respected Mary because she had helped many of them when they were sick or injured. Thomas, drunk and desperate for money, made a horrible decision that would haunt him forever. He agreed to let Mary take Emma in exchange for horses and supplies that could save their ranch. In his twisted thinking, he believed he was helping both of them. Mary would get help with her work, and Emma would have a purpose even if she couldn't be a mother. When Emma learned about her father's decision, she felt her world crashing down round her like a house in a windstorm. "Father, how could you?" she cried, tears streaming down her face like a river. "I'm your daughter, not something to be traded away." But Thomas was too drunk and ashamed to listen properly. He mumbled something about it being for the best and stumbled away to find another bottle. Emma realized that the father she had once loved was truly gone, replaced by this stranger who could trade away his own child. As Emma packed her few belongings into a small cloth bag, her heart broke into pieces. She felt worthless and abandoned, like a broken tool that nobody wanted anymore. She folded her mother's old dress carefully, wondering if she would ever see her home again. The woman named Mary waited patiently by her horse outside their house. Her dark eyes were kind but unreadable, like deep water that reflected the sky but hid its secrets. She wore traditional Apache clothing mixed with some white woman's items, showing how she moved between both worlds. "I am sorry this happened to you," Mary said softly in broken English, her voice carrying genuine sadness. "But you will be safe with me. I promise you this." Emma climbed onto the horse behind Mary, her small bag clutched tightly in her hands, as they rode away from the only home she had ever known. She looked back once at the small ranch house where her father stood watching from the porch. He raised his hand in a weak goodbye, but Emma turned away, unable to forgive him yet dot as they rode toward the Apache settlement in the distant mountains. Emma wondered if her life would ever have meaning again, not knowing that this terrible day was actually the beginning of something beautiful. Mary's Apache settlement was unlike anything Emma had imagined during their long ride through the desert mountains. Instead of the dangerous and wild place her father's drunken stories had described, she found a peaceful community nestled in a beautiful valley where clear water ran through green grass and tall trees provided cool shade from the hot Arizona sun. The settlement had about 30 families living in traditional Apache homes called wickiups, which were round structures made from wooden poles and covered with grass and animal skins. But Emma also noticed some newer buildings that mixed Apache and white building styles, showing how Mary's people had learned to adapt and survive in a changing world. Children played happily in the open spaces between homes, their laughter echoing off the canyon walls. Women worked together preparing food and making clothes, talking and smiling as they shared their daily tasks. Men returned from hunting with deer and rabbits, greeted warmly by their families. The whole place felt alive with community spirit that Emma had never experienced in her lonely life on the failing ranch. Mary, whose Apache name meant wise woman, was clearly respected by everyone in the settlement. She was about 40 years old, with long black hair streaked with early gray, and hands that moved with confidence and grace. She had learned both traditional Apache healing methods passed down through generations and some modern medicine from white doctors who had once helped her people during difficult times. Emma was surprised to discover that Mary spoke English very well, much better than she had shown during their ride. She had been quiet during the journey, perhaps thinking carefully about how to help the scared young white woman who had been thrust into her care through such terrible circumstances. "This is your home now," Mary said gently, showing Emma a small but comfortable dwelling that stood near her own larger home. The little house had been built especially for guests, with a real wooden floor, a small fireplace, and even a window with glass that let in the morning light. "You are not a prisoner here. You are, how do you say, a guest who stays." Emma stood in the doorway of the little house, confused and uncertain. She had expected to be treated like property, like something her father had sold to be used however Mary wanted. Instead, she found herself being given her own space and treated with surprising respect and dignity. Mary asked nothing of Emma during those first few days. Instead, she brought her meals of cornbread, fresh vegetables and meat, stewed with herbs that tasted better than anything Emma had eaten in months. Mary taught her simple Apache words like hello and thank you and friend, speaking slowly and patiently when Emma struggled with the unfamiliar sounds. In the afternoons, Mary took Emma on walks round the settlement and into the surrounding hills, showing her the plants used for healing. She pointed out purple flowers that helped with headaches, roots that settled upset stomachs, and leaves that could clean wounds and prevent infection. Mary's knowledge seemed endless, and she shared it freely with Emma as if she were teaching. A beloved daughter rather than someone who had been traded to her. The Apache people were welcoming to Emma in ways that surprised her completely. The women smiled and nodded when they passed her, and some even tried to speak a few English words they knew. The children were curious but polite, sometimes following her at a distance and giggling when she tried to speak their language. Even the men, who Emma had feared might be hostile, simply nodded respectfully and continued with their work. One evening, as Emma sat with Mary beside a crackling fire outside Mary's home, watching the stars appear in the clear desert sky, she finally asked the question that had been troubling her mind for days. "Why are you being so kind to me?" Emma asked, her voice small and uncertain. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. My father traded me away like I was a broken tool." Mary looked thoughtful for a long moment, staring into the dancing flames before she answered. Her voice was gentle but strong when she finally spoke. "Because kindness costs nothing, but gives everything," she replied, her English careful but clear. "You have been hurt deeply by people who should have protected you. Healing takes time. Like a broken bone that must be set properly before it can grow strong again." Mary reached over and gently touched Emma's hand. "I see pain in your eyes, the same pain I once carried. When we heal others, we also heal ourselves. This is the Apache way. And it is also the human way." As the weeks passed, Emma began to feel something she hadn't felt in years, perhaps not since her mother was alive. True peace. The constant worry and fear that had filled her days at the ranch slowly faded away. She woke each morning to the sound of birds singing instead of her father's angry shouting. She ate regular meals and slept safely in her own bed without worrying about what tomorrow might bring. Mary's wisdom amazed Emma more each day. The Apache woman knew about healing not just bodies but also hearts and spirits. She understood that Emma needed time to trust again, time to believe that someone could care about her without wanting something in return. For the first time since her mother's death, Emma felt like someone truly cared about her well-being, not as property or burden, but as a person with value and potential for happiness. As weeks turned to months in the peaceful Apache settlement, Emma began to notice that Mary carried a deep sadness behind her wise eyes. The same kind of sadness that Emma knew so well from her own heart. The two women had grown comfortable with each other, sharing quiet meals and long walks through the desert hills. But Emma sensed there was more to Mary's story than she had shared one quiet evening in late summer. As they sat together watching the sunset paint the canyon walls in shades of orange and red, Mary finally opened her heart and shared the story that explained why she had chosen to help Emma in such a special way. "I once had a husband and a baby," Mary said, her voice soft and filled with old sadness that time had not completely healed. "His name was Running Bear, and he was the kindest man in our tribe. Our baby was a little girl with eyes like stars. They both died from the white man's sickness many winters ago. When I was not much older than you're now." Emma felt tears gathering in her eyes as she listened. She had wondered why Mary lived alone in a settlement where most women had families. And now she understood the deep loss that had shaped Mary's life. "How did you heal from such terrible pain?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She thought about her own mother's death and how it had broken their family apart, leading to everything that followed. Mary was quiet for a moment, watching an eagle circle high above them in the darkening sky. When she spoke again, her voice was stronger, filled with wisdom earned through years of suffering and recovery. "By helping others heal," Mary replied simply. "When we use our pain to help others, it becomes something beautiful instead of something that destroys us. This is what the spirits taught me in my darkest days." Mary explained that after losing her family, She had wanted to die too. But the tribal elders and medicine people had guided her toward healing work, teaching her that her suffering could become a gift to others who are hurting. Slowly, she had learned both Apache healing traditions and some white medicine, becoming someone who could help people from both worlds. Over the following weeks, Mary began teaching Emma about herbs and healing in a more serious way. She showed Emma how to identify dozens of different plants, how to prepare medicines, and most importantly, how to listen to people's pain with compassion and understanding. Emma discovered she had a natural gift for helping people feel better, both in their bodies and in their hearts, together. They treated Apache people who came to Mary's home with various ailments, children with fevers, women having difficult births, men injured in hunting accidents, and elders struggling with the pains of old age. Sometimes white settlers also came seeking help when their own doctors were too far away or when Mary's reputation for healing had reached their ears. Despite the racial tensions of the time, Emma watched in amazement as Mary worked. She never turned anyone away, regardless of their race or whether they could pay. She treated a white rancher's infected wound with the same care she gave to Apache children, and she taught Emma that healing knew no boundaries between people. You see, Mary said one day as Emma successfully helped a feverish Apache child by applying cool cloths and giving him the right herbal tea. The little boy's fever had broken, and he was sitting up and smiling for the first time in days. Your worth is not about having babies. Your worth is about the love and healing you give to the world. Those words hit Emma like lightning, changing everything she had believed about herself since the traveling doctor had told her she might never have children. She realized that she had been measuring her value by something she couldn't control, instead of recognizing the gifts she did possess. As the months passed, Emma felt something growing in her heart that was more than just gratitude toward Mary. She found herself admiring Mary's incredible strength, her deep wisdom that came from surviving terrible loss, and her gentle nature that somehow remained soft despite all the hardness life had thrown at her. Emma had never met anyone like Mary, someone who combined such power with such kindness. For the first time in her life, Emma felt truly understood and valued by another person. Mary saw her as she really was, not as damaged goods or a burden, but as someone with unique gifts and the potential for happiness. Emma began to realize that the feelings growing in her heart were deeper than friendship, deeper than gratitude. The two women grew closer each day, sharing not just their daily work but also their stories, their laughter, and their dreams for the future. Emma told Mary about her mother's gentle ways and her memories of happier times before alcohol destroyed her father. Mary shared Apache stories and taught Emma songs that her own mother had sung to her long ago. They began to move together like partners who had known each other for years, anticipating each other's needs and supporting each other through both the easy days and the difficult ones. Emma realized that what she felt from Mary was love, not the kind she had imagined with the young men back in Red Valley, but something deeper and more meaningful than anything she had ever experienced. Emma and Mary's friendship had grown into something beautiful and rare over the passing seasons, a deep, caring love that went beyond anything either woman had experienced before. They supported each other through everything, from the smallest daily challenges to the deeper struggles of healing broken hearts and bodies. Working side by side as healers, they had become partners in every sense of the word, sharing not just their work but their hopes, fears, and dreams for the future. Their days began before sunrise as they gathered herbs in the cool morning air, talking quietly about the people they would help that day. They moved together with the easy rhythm of two people who understood each other completely, finishing each other's thoughts and knowing exactly what the other needed without having to ask. Emma had learned to prepare medicines with skill that amazed even the tribal elders, while Mary had grown stronger and happier with Emma's companionship filling the lonely spaces in her heart. But their unusual partnership faced challenges that tested their commitment to each other and their work. Some Apache people questioned why Mary had brought a white woman to live among them during such difficult times when tensions between the races were high. They worried that Emma might bring trouble to their community, or that she could never truly understand their ways and traditions. At the same time, some white settlers who came seeking medical help whispered about Emma and Mary's close friendship with suspicion and disapproval. They couldn't understand why a white woman would choose to live with Apache people, and they spread rumors about their relationship that made both women's lives more difficult. Some refused to accept treatment from Emma because she lived with the Apache, while others demanded that only Mary treat them, showing their prejudice clearly. But Emma and Mary didn't let others' opinions break the strong bond they had built together. They continued their healing work with dedication and compassion, helping anyone who needed it, regardless of whether they were Apache or white, young or old, rich or poor. They proved through their actions that love and healing could cross any boundary that society tried to create. Their reputation as skilled healers grew throughout the territory. People traveled long distances to seek their help, drawn by stories of miraculous recoveries and the unusual partnership between the Apache medicine woman and her white companion. Emma had found her true calling in life, discovering that her gentle nature and quick mind made her a natural healer who could comfort people in their darkest moments. One autumn day, almost 2 years after Emma had first arrived at the settlement, an unexpected visitor appeared. Thomas, Emma's father, rode slowly into the Apache community looking older, but healthier than Emma had seen him in years. He had stopped drinking and had clearly taken care of himself. But his eyes were filled with guilt and shame for what he had done to his daughter. Emma felt her heart racing when she saw him approaching Mary's home where she was grinding herbs for medicine. She had wondered many times if she would ever see her father again, and had mixed feelings about the possibility. Part of her still loved the man he had been before alcohol destroyed their family. But another part of her remembered the pain of being traded away like property. Emma. "I've come to take you home," Thomas said, his voice shaking with emotion as he climbed down from his horse. "I was wrong about everything. I'm sober now. And I want to make things right between us. The ranch is doing better, and I've built you a new room with proper windows and everything." Emma looked at her father, seeing both the man she had once loved and the stranger who had hurt her so deeply. Then she looked at Mary, who stood quietly nearby, her face calm but her eyes showing the pain this moment was causing her. Mary had never tried to keep Emma against her will, always telling her that she was free to leave whenever she chose. For the first time in her life, Emma realized she had a real choice to make for herself. She was no longer the scared, abandoned girl who had been traded away like a broken tool. She had become a strong woman with valuable skills and a deep love that gave her life meaning and purpose. "Father, I forgive you for what you did," Emma said gently, her voice steady and sure. "I understand that you were hurting and didn't know how to handle your pain. But this is my home now. Mary and I help people here, and we've built something good together that I don't want to give up." Thomas looked surprised, clearly expecting Emma to jump at the chance to return to her old life. But as he studied his daughter's face, he saw something that amazed him, genuine happiness and confidence that he had never seen in her before. Emma stood straighter, spoke with authority, and had a glow in her eyes that showed she had found her place in the world. "You look happy here," Thomas said finally, his voice full of wonder. "I thought I was rescuing you, but I can see that you've already rescued yourself." Emma smiled at her father with real warmth for the first time in years. "If this is what makes you happy, then I'm glad," Thomas said, meaning every word as he saw the woman his daughter had become. Emma chose to stay with Mary, and as the seasons changed from autumn to winter to spring again, their bond grew even stronger. They decided to make their commitment to each other official in a beautiful ceremony that would honor both Apache and white traditions, showing the world that love could bridge any divide between different peoples and cultures. The ceremony took place on a warm spring morning when wildflowers bloomed across the valley and the air smelled sweet with new growth. Mary wore traditional Apache dress decorated with intricate beadwork that told the story of healing and wisdom, while Emma wore her mother's white dress that she had carefully preserved, altered now with Apache symbols that Mary's friends had helped her embroider during the long winter evenings. The whole community came together to celebrate their union. Apache elders performed traditional blessings, calling on the spirits to protect and guide the two women in their life together. At the same time, Emma spoke vows in English that she had written herself, promising to love and support Mary through all the joys and challenges that lay ahead. Even some white settlers who had come to respect their healing work attended the ceremony, showing that attitudes were slowly beginning to change. The celebration lasted all day, with music, dancing, and feasting that brought together people who might never have sat at the same table in the outside world. Children from both cultures played together while their parents shared stories and food, creating memories that would last for generations. It was a day that proved love could overcome fear and prejudice when people opened their hearts to new possibilities. Together, Emma and Mary became known as the best healers in the entire territory. People traveled from hundreds of miles away to seek their help, bringing ailments that other doctors couldn't cure and problems that seemed impossible to solve. Emma had learned to speak Apache fluently, her voice carrying the rhythm and music of the language as naturally as if she had been born to it. Mary's English had improved greatly too, and she could now explain complex medical treatments to white patients with clarity and confidence. They served as bridges between two different worlds that had been separated by fear and misunderstanding for too long. When Apache people needed to deal with white authorities or doctors, Emma helped translate not just words but cultural differences. When white settlers wanted to learn about Apache healing methods, Mary shared her knowledge freely, believing that wisdom belonged to all humanity. Their love and deep respect for each other inspired everyone who met them to look beyond surface differences and see the good that existed in all people. They showed through their daily lives that families could come in many different forms, and that love truly had no boundaries of race, culture, or tradition. Young people especially were touched by their example, and some began to question the prejudices they had been taught since childhood as the years passed. Emma and Mary's home became a place of refuge for those who had nowhere else to turn. When orphan children from both cultures needed homes after disease or violence took their parents, Emma and Mary welcomed them with open arms and generous hearts. They created a unique family built on love, understanding, and the shared desire to help others heal and grow. Their household grew to include 5 children over the years, 2 Apache boys, 1 white girl, and 2 children of mixed heritage who had been rejected by both communities. Emma and Mary raised them all with equal love, teaching them both Apache traditions and white customs, showing them that they could be proud of all parts of their heritage. The children learned healing arts from both women and grew up speaking multiple languages, becoming bridges themselves between different worlds. Emma often thought about her incredible journey from that sad, abandoned girl who had felt worthless, and broken to this fulfilled woman who woke each morning knowing her life had deep meaning and purpose. She had discovered that her true value had never come from what she couldn't do or the traditional roles she couldn't fill, but from the love and healing she could offer to a world that desperately needed both. The traveling doctor who had once told her she might never have children had been wrong about what mattered most. Emma had become a mother to children who needed her, a healer to people who suffered, and a partner to someone who understood her completely. She had learned that families weren't just about blood relationships, but about the choice to love and care for others unconditionally. On quiet evenings, as Emma and Mary sat together on the porch of their expanded home, watching the sunset paint the canyon walls in brilliant colors while their children played nearby, Emma knew she had found her true purpose in life. The stars that appeared in the clear desert sky seemed to twinkle with approval, and the gentle evening breeze carried the sounds of laughter and contentment. She had learned one of life's most important lessons, that sometimes the most unexpected and difficult paths lead to the most beautiful destinations. What had begun as the worst day of her life, when her drunken father traded her away, had actually been the first step toward finding the love, purpose, and family she had always been meant to have. Emma smiled as Mary took her hand, both women watching their children chase fireflies in the gathering darkness, knowing that their love had created something beautiful that would last for generations. The end.